Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. There is the bit.ly to today's slides. It is case sensitive, so it's bit.ly backslash capital TBP and then today's date 10/9/109. So I'll give you another second to write that in. Um, if you want a copy of today's slides, here they are. But yeah, we're going to talk Eduphoria, just the basics. So if you're kind of new to the district or new to Eduphoria, this is a great entry point for you, and we'll keep rolling. So let's go ahead into our norms for today. If you like Norm from Cheers, I do. Our Titan core values, right? Truthful and tenacious, innovative, accountable, and nurturing. And be curious. Ask questions using that Q&A feature. So there's this little icon here, the triangle on top of the square and circle is a Q&A feature. So if you have questions, just go ahead and drop them in there because there's no chat feature on this. So I won't see any questions unless they're in that um, feature. And lastly, find your joy. So whatever that looks like for you, maybe you had a great moment with a student today, or maybe you're just excited about the weekend coming up, a couple extra days off. Whatever that is, find your joy. And let's go ahead and talk about why are we doing these tech talks in the first place. So Josh and I actually don't work in the IT department. We work in the teaching and learning department. So it's IT's job to make sure the app is working, it's rostering properly. Josh and I are making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with it and it's working for you. So that's the distinction there. So I know I'll walk campuses and people are like, hey, I've got this broken iPad. I'm like, I can't do anything about that. But if your Eduphoria test isn't showing up, I can troubleshoot that. And then hopefully these talks kind of spark a future conversation. So if you see something here and you're like, hey, Connor, next week, can you come to my campus? I would love to. I just need to know where who needs to see me, and same with Josh. Like if you see something you're like, hey, Josh, I want to pick your brain about Google Classroom. He's your guy. Like schedule time on his calendar. He can come out to you. Um, so that's part of why we're doing these things. Um, there are lots and lots of resources on Titan Game Plan under PD, How To, and Eduphoria. There's also under that How To section, there's videos on Map and videos on Skyward. So if you go to Class Link and go into Titan Game Plan and follow those steps, PD, How To, Eduphoria, it will take you right there. And we've got a YouTube playlist of these are all my Eduphoria videos are on that playlist as well. So if you see something, you're like, Connor showed us this thing, but I never got a chance to look at it. All my videos are there for you to refer back to. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Eduphoria. There are two parts to Eduphoria. So there's the Strive part that houses all of your t-tests and your evaluation documents. And then there's the Aware part, which we'll probably be spending more of today's time, where teachers can create assessments, proctor assessments, and analyze the data from those assessments. And so Slow, which if you're like Andy Dwyer in the memes today, I went a little meme heavy today. Um, Slow is student learning objective. Slow kind of lives in both because if you think about it, the student learning objective, you're going to track data on it. Well, if we're tracking data and assessment data, that lives in Aware, but it's also part of your t-tests, so that's why it lives in Strive. So Slow lives in both. Again, there's videos on Slow and how to set up your portfolio and all that stuff. So couple things about our campuses and the way they're set up in Eduphoria. Um, if you see 101 Dallas, that includes any of those four campuses. And if you see 104 Fort Worth, that includes any of those campuses. The reason they are set up that way is that is how they are as far as TEA is concerned. Even though you and I know that they're separate buildings with separate principals and separate teachers and separate dismissal lines, for whatever reason, TEA thinks you're all one campus. So Eduphoria goes, you're all one campus. So just FYI on that. Biggest thing in Eduphoria, the first thing you should do every year is make sure your profile is set up correctly. So you can click on it from one of two places. Either way gets you to the exact same screen. But you want to make sure your profile is set up. You want to make sure your school matches. So if you're a Ledbetter teacher, you want to make sure that 101 Dallas box is checked. Okay. And then you really want to make sure that security question is set up because that is how you electronically sign documents. And you're like, Connor, it's October. I don't really care about electronically signing documents. I hear that. And I will tell you, in May, when everyone is super stressed out and you cannot sign your t-test because you never set up your profile, this is going to save you a little bit of stress in May. So make sure you set up that security question. All right. Um, Eduphoria is rostered through Skyward. And this is just an example. infographic, so don't pay too attention to what is a primary key, what is foreign key. Don't worry about that. But basically, I want you to think about like all the information that is in Skyward. So if this kid is in your math class, section C, that's the information that gets transmitted to Eduphoria nightly. So if you're having an issue with like, I can't see this kid in Eduphoria, my first question is, can you see them in Skyward? Because if you can't, there's no way you're going to see them in Eduphoria. So think of Skyward as like the mothership that rosters out to all the apps, Eduphoria being one of them. Okay. So Strive, okay, that's that t-test ones. If you cannot see any t-test forms at all, odds are your appraiser hasn't claimed him. Like I said, I want a little meme heavy, I want a little nerd heavy with Lord of the Rings. Um, but basically, if you're like, hey, I can't see any t-test forms, then you need to talk to whoever your appraiser is. Maybe that's your assistant principal or your principal and say, hey, can you make sure I'm claimed as your appraisee? And they just go in and say, yep, I'm the appraiser. And then that kickstarts the whole t-test process. Okay. Um, that's all I want to say about Strive. I want to spend more of our time talking about Aware. So teachers can create their own test, and it's called a teacher test, exactly what it should be. So your screen should look something like this. You can change the grade level, you can change the subject, but the test type should always say teacher test. And in fact, that should be the only option for you in that dropdown. If you go to create a test and you see, and you are a teacher, but you see other options like this one says quick checks or this one says math unit assessments, please let me know ASAP because that is not how it's supposed to set up and that will cause problems for you and your students later. If you try to create an assessment and you have a different test type, you'll have issues seeing that data. And so I want to make sure it's working for you. So if you're making your own tests, use a teacher test. You have way more question types than you could possibly ever use at Eduphoria. You've got all of these, the new star items. Remember when that changed a few years ago, right? But I didn't even know. Like today, I was editing my slides, and I was like, oh yeah, they have inequality graphing, which who knew? But maybe you're an algebra teacher and you're excited that you can make a question now for inequality graphing. That's awesome. But you've got the drag and drop, you've got the hotspot, you've got the multiple selection, you've got all of the different question types that you could if you wanted to. And I threw a little stepbrothers in there to, have fun. Um, so much room for activities, so much room for different question types. When it's time to proctor the test, you're like, okay, Connor, I've made the test. Now what do I do? You're going to go click that administer button. So that means like I'm going to start the test. And then again, I've linked my YouTube video there. It's all on our channel. And that is how you will start the test. So from the teacher perspective, let's say you're like, hey, I turned it on, gave the test, but now Connor, I can't see any data. And I get this call from principals multiple times a year. And they're like, hey, I have this seventh grade RLA teacher here, and she swears she gave the assessment, but we can't see any data for it. She looked and I looked, and I'm like, let me stop you right there. Does the test have a constructed response? And if it does, the teacher has to score each constructed response for each kid, and then you'll see data in it. Okay. And I've got the steps to scoring a constructed response right there. From the student side, they have to log out of their Chromebook entirely. They have to click apps on the bottom left and then select Eduphoria Lockdown Browser. Their username is their 6-digit ID. I'll get to the password on the next slide. So that is how the students will take it. They will not go to Eduphoria for ClassLink. Here's why we do the lockdown browser. If I were to open up Eduphoria and ClassLink as a kid, I can also open up another tab and Google, how do I solve this question? What's the, whatever. So the lockdown browser is just that. It locks them into the Eduphoria test and they cannot go into anything else. It's a similar to process to how they take Map or Star. So that's how they will take Eduphoria tests. Like I said, their username is their 6-digit ID. So we want to protect that 6-digit ID like you would your credit card number. So do not be posting student ID numbers in the hall. I mean, I don't think teachers would like it if we posted the passwords to all their things on the wall. So please don't share out 6-digit student IDs like it's craziness. Like try and protect them as best as you can. And then those are the individual passwords for each campus. So it'll be Titans, and then the other ones will be those passwords. Okay. If you want to do custom passwords, like you're like, Connor, I would like all of seventh grade to have a different password than the rest of the campus. We have options. I just need you to email me and we can set something up based on what your needs are. The most common ticket, and I threw little Beatles in this time. Like I said, I went meme heavy today. Is I get like, hey, I'm trying to give this test and it's not there. And if that's all the information you give me, like I'm trying to give a test today and I can't see it, I I am zero help to you because you didn't tell me anything about what I'm supposed to be looking for. But if you tell me like the name of the test, or if you don't know the name because you can't see it, like at least give me something to find. Like it's amplify skills to third grade. Like if you give me a grade level, a subject, something that's probably in the title, or something like something to help me find the test, that helps me narrow down where we can. So that's just good practice for any Eduphoria help desk tickets you put in or any emails you send to me, is try and give me as much information as possible about what that test is. So that way we can help you get that test going pretty soon. Um, don't forget about the student profiles in Eduphoria. This one is, I think, like a really good feature I wish teachers would use more of. So it's in the bottom left under students under profiles. And then you can find any kid, you can search any kid who's rostered to you again, because it's rostered through Skyward. All right. And then in that, you can click on this tests and scores tab. And this tests and scores has a treasure trove of information. It will basically have anything that we have data on for that kid in Eduphoria. So, for instance, if there was a eighth grader who's been with us since third grade, any test they've taken in Eduphoria is now in there. So we can look back at all that historical data if you want to. Um, Even if a kid is new to the district, what I have done for you guys is I've requested their official star files from TEA and I've uploaded them into Eduphoria. So we can see, just because this kid started fifth grade this year, if they took a fourth grade math star, we can see what their fourth grade math star results were. Um, if you see a kid who you're like pretty sure is new and you're like pretty sure they're not just new to the state of Texas and they should have star scores, email me and be like, "Hey Connor, I'd love to get historical star data on such and such kid. Um, I just need those 6-digit ID numbers to help me um, narrow down that kid." Okay. So that is all we have for today. Thank you for coming. Try and keep them short and sweet. Our next tech talk will dive a little deeper into Eduphoria. So this is kind of just an overview. This next one will get really into the weeds of the different reports you can run. So that will be at 4:15, same time, and then at 10:23, so about 2 weeks from today. Um, and then if you have suggestions for future topics, like you're like, hey, I would love to see a tech talk on blah blah blah, just email me and Josh. Our emails are right there. So that is all I have, and I'm just going to check that we don't have any questions and answers. We do not, so we're good. um, Thank you guys so much, and you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.